Have you ever felt that no matter how hard you work, how much effort you put in, someone else, someone less qualified, less honest, less hardworking, ends up holding the power? Maybe in your workplace, you're the one staying late, keeping everything afloat, while another person, who knows how to smile at the right people and say the right words, gets the promotion. Or maybe in your relationships, you found yourself being manipulated, controlled, or quietly overpowered while you tell yourself that being good, kind, and fair should be enough. But here's the unsettling truth. In life, it's rarely the kindest, the most honest, or even the most talented who rise. It's the ones who understand power, its psychology, its mechanisms, its shadows. And perhaps the most infamous voice on this subject was Niccolò Machiavelli, a man so controversial that his name itself became synonymous with manipulation and ruthless cunning. Yet here's the twist most people miss. Machiavelli wasn't writing a handbook for villains. He wasn't whispering in the ear of tyrants, "Be cruel, be heartless, destroy everything in your path." What he was doing was something far more profound and far more dangerous. He was holding up a mirror to human nature. He was exposing the brutal truths about how people behave, how societies operate, and how power actually moves beneath the surface. And that's what makes this journey both terrifying and liberating. Because once you see how power really works, you can never unsee it. You start to recognize the games being played around you. The subtle manipulations, the alliances, the betrayals, the masks people wear to hide their intentions. You realize why the world often rewards charm over competence, boldness over morality, image over truth. And maybe, deep down, you start to ask yourself a forbidden question. What if I've been playing the wrong game all along? This video is not about turning you into a schemer or teaching you how to become ruthless. It's about something deeper. It's about giving you the vision Machiavelli offered. The ability to see reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. Because until you do, you'll always be at the mercy of those who already see it. Think about it this way. In chess, the player who sees 5 moves ahead doesn't have to be the strongest piece on the board. They simply need to understand the rules better than their opponent. In life, the same is true. Power doesn't belong to the purest or even to the most intelligent. It belongs to those who see. And the tragedy is, most people never look closely enough. So let me ask you directly, how much of your life has been shaped not by your own choices, but by the invisible hand of someone else's influence? How many times have you said yes when you wanted to say no because you were afraid of conflict? How many times have you watched someone rise, not because they deserved it, but because they understood how to project strength, how to make others believe in them, even if it was all smoke and mirrors? If these questions stir something inside you, then you're beginning to grasp the importance of what we're about to uncover. Because Machiavelli's dark psychology of power isn't just about politics or history. It's about you, your relationships, your career, your very sense of agency in the world. But I'll warn you, this is not going to be comfortable. To truly understand Machiavelli is to confront aspects of human behavior we'd rather ignore. The selfishness behind generosity, the calculation behind kindness, the fear behind loyalty. It means admitting that the stories we've been told, that good always triumphs, that honesty is always rewarded, are at best half-truths. Yet, here's the paradox. Facing this darkness doesn't corrupt you, it frees you. Because once you see the game, you're no longer a pawn in it. You're no longer blindly giving away your power, mistaking naivety for virtue. Instead, you begin to move differently, more deliberately, more consciously. You begin to balance idealism with realism, compassion with strategy, morality with strength. That's the journey we're about to take together. A journey through Machiavelli's mind, not to glorify manipulation, but to uncover the psychological principles that shape power in every human interaction. Principles that, once you understand them, can change how you see the world forever. But let me be very clear, this video isn't for everyone. Because once you learn to see the dynamics of power, you won't be able to return to the comfort of illusions. You'll start noticing things about people, your boss, your friends, even yourself, that you may not like. You'll see the masks slip, the strings being pulled, the hidden motives behind polished words. And that can be unsettling. But if you're tired of being blindsided, if you're ready to step out of the role of the exploited and into the role of someone who sees, someone who acts with both clarity and strength, then stay with me. Because what Machiavelli really taught is not the art of cruelty, it's the art of survival, and more than that, it's the art of sovereignty. So let's begin by peeling back the layers, by diving into the core of what Machiavelli was really saying, about human nature, about power, and about the truth we've been taught to deny. To understand Machiavelli, we first have to strip away the myth. For centuries, his name has been synonymous with manipulation, deceit, and ruthless ambition. When someone calls a person Machiavellian, they usually mean cunning, scheming, even sinister. But that caricature misses the essence of what he was trying to teach. Machiavelli wasn't a villain. He was an observer, a man who looked at the world as it is, not as people pretend it to be. At the heart of his work, especially in The Prince, lies a single, uncomfortable question. What actually works when it comes to power? Not what should work, not what we hope will work, but what really does. This is why his writing is still so provocative today, because instead of comforting us with stories of virtue rewarded, he exposed the raw mechanics of human behavior. He forced us to see that beneath the polished speeches, the religious rituals, the public smiles, and the polite handshakes, there lies a constant struggle for survival, influence, and control. Machiavelli understood something most of us instinctively feel but rarely articulate. Humans are not purely rational nor purely moral. We are driven by fear, by desire, by appearances, and by survival instincts older than civilization itself. And the ones who rise are not always those who are most virtuous, but those who understand these instincts and know how to work with them. One of his most famous and most misunderstood ideas captures this perfectly, that it is better for a ruler to be feared than loved if they cannot be both. On the surface, this sounds cruel, but if we look deeper, what Machiavelli was pointing to was the fragility of human loyalty. Love is fickle. Affection can be bought, manipulated, or withdrawn. But fear compels behavior in a more reliable way. Fear secures obedience when affection falters. Does that mean Machiavelli advocated cruelty for its own sake? No. In fact, he warned against unnecessary brutality. He understood that excessive cruelty breeds rebellion. His point was simpler. Power rests not on ideals, but on predictable human behavior, and fear is often more predictable than love. Think about this in modern terms. In your workplace, who commands more authority? The boss who tries to be everyone's friend but can't enforce deadlines, or the one whose expectations are crystal clear, whose disappointment you genuinely fear, even if you respect them too? Machiavelli would say the latter every time. Not because fear is better in some moral sense, but because it creates more reliable compliance. This was Machiavelli's genius. He looked past the stories people tell about morality and went straight to the results. He was the first political psychologist, long before psychology even had a name. Another key insight he gave us is the importance of appearances. He wrote that it is not necessary for a leader to be truly virtuous. It is only necessary to appear so. Why? Because most people don't look beneath the surface. They judge based on what they can see. If a leader seems generous, brave, or pious, people will follow, even if, in private, that same leader is calculating and ruthless. This wasn't cynicism, it was realism. Machiavelli wasn't telling leaders to abandon virtue. He was telling them that perception often matters more than reality, and if you think about it, this is still true today. In politics, in business, Even in personal relationships, people rarely reward you for your internal intentions. They reward you for the image you project, the confidence you exude, the story you make them believe. Here's where the psychology deepens. Machiavelli believed that humans are guided not by abstract moral principles, but by immediate incentives and fears. And those who rise to power are those who align their actions with these psychological levers. For example, he stressed the importance of decisiveness. People, he said, respect boldness, even when it's flawed. Hesitation, on the other hand, invites weakness. Why? Because uncertainty makes people anxious, and anxious people turn against a leader. We see this today when a company respects a CEO who makes a controversial but clear choice, even if it fails, far more than one who dithers and stalls. Confidence creates stability. Machiavelli also warned against blind trust. He observed that people act out of self-interest and that loyalty is conditional. Friends are loyal until it no longer benefits them. Allies are allies until the winds of fortune shift. This wasn't bitterness, it was a recognition of human psychology. By seeing loyalty as conditional, a leader can prepare for betrayal instead of being destroyed by it. Notice how brutally honest this is. Machiavelli strips away the illusions we cling to. We want to believe in unconditional loyalty, in pure intentions, in people who will stand by us no matter what. But reality shows us otherwise. And his point wasn't to despair, it was to prepare. By expecting betrayal, you are less likely to be blindsided. By understanding that loyalty has limits, you protect yourself from devastation. This is the essence of Machiavelli's dark psychology. He taught us that if you want to navigate power, you must learn to see humans not as ideals, but as they are, driven by fear, desire, appearances, and self-interest. And by learning this, you begin to operate differently. You stop projecting your own innocence onto others. You stop assuming the world is fair. You begin to move with a kind of clarity that others can't understand, because you're no longer trapped in illusions. Now, let's go even deeper. Machiavelli introduced the concept of virtù, a word that doesn't translate neatly into English. It doesn't mean virtue in the moral sense. It means a combination of strength, boldness, adaptability, and cunning, the qualities that allow a person to shape fortune rather than be shaped by it. Virtù is not about being good, it's about being effective. It's about having the psychological flexibility to know when to be gentle and when to be ruthless, when to appear generous and when to withdraw, when to trust and when to deceive. It's the art of reading the currents of human nature and adjusting your sails accordingly. And this connects to another of his famous ideas, fortuna, or fortune. Machiavelli believed that half of life is determined by forces outside our control, luck, circumstance, timing, but the other half is shaped by our ability to respond to those forces with virtù. This is the dance of power. You cannot control everything, but you can control how you position yourself, how you act, how you anticipate. Think of it like standing by a river. The river is fortuna, wild, uncontrollable, sometimes flooding, sometimes drying up. You can't change the river, but with virtù, you can build canals, you can direct the flow, you can prepare for floods. You can't stop fortune, but you can shape how it impacts you. This is where Machiavelli's psychology becomes deeply practical. He wasn't telling us to become tyrants. He was telling us life is unpredictable, people are self-interested, appearances matter, and fear is often more reliable than love. Ignore these truths, and you will be crushed by them. Face them, and you can navigate them with clarity. Now, you might be thinking, this all makes sense, but isn't it a little dark? Isn't it depressing to think of people this way? And here's the paradox. Yes, it's dark, but it's liberating. Because the moment you stop expecting people to be purely virtuous, you stop being disappointed when they aren't. The moment you see that appearances matter more than intentions, you stop wasting energy trying to prove your heart. You learn to play the game that's actually being played, not the one you wish existed. This is why Machiavelli still matters. He was not just a political thinker. He was a psychologist of power. He showed us that human beings are not angels or demons. We are strategic animals, driven by survival, fear, and desire. And the sooner we accept that, the sooner we can begin to move through the world with strength instead of naivety. But here's where things take a darker turn. Because while Machiavelli's insights can empower you, ignoring them can destroy you. If you fail to understand the psychology of power, you don't escape it. You simply become its victim. You become the pawn in someone else's strategy, the loyal follower betrayed at the worst moment, the honest worker overlooked while the cunning climb. And that's where we must go next. Because if Machiavelli gave us the tools to see reality, he also warned us about what happens when we refuse to. Let's turn now to the shadow. Because if Section 2 revealed the mechanics of power, this section reveals what happens when you ignore them. And the truth is brutal. Misunderstanding power doesn't make you immune to it. It only makes you vulnerable. Think about chess. If you sit down at the board without understanding the rules, you don't opt out of the game. You just get crushed faster. Power is the same. Pretending it doesn't exist doesn't protect you. It just guarantees you'll be moved around by those who understand it better. Machiavelli saw this clearly. He wrote that those who fail to anticipate human self-interest, who naively rely on loyalty or virtue alone, often end up betrayed, powerless, or destroyed. And you don't have to be a king or a prince to experience this. You can see it in your workplace, in your friendships, even in your closest relationships. Let's start with the workplace. Imagine someone who truly believes that hard work alone is enough for recognition. They pour themselves into every task. They stay late, cover for colleagues, never complain. They think, if I just do a good job, people will notice. My boss will reward me. But then comes promotion season. And who gets the recognition? Not them. It's the one who managed impressions, who built alliances, who made their contributions visible. The hard worker is shocked. They think, but I deserved it. And maybe they did. But Machiavelli would say they misunderstood the game. They believed appearances didn't matter. They thought loyalty and effort alone guaranteed reward. And because of that blindness, they became expendable. This is the first consequence of ignoring Machiavelli's truths. Invisibility. When you assume people will see and value your true self or your quiet efforts, you become forgettable. You fade into the background, and in the realm of power, invisibility is a slow death. Now consider relationships. Many people believe that loyalty is sacred, that once you give yourself fully to someone, whether a friend or a partner, that loyalty will be matched in kind. But Machiavelli warned us, loyalty is conditional. It lasts only as long as it serves someone's self-interest. Ignore this, and you risk pouring yourself into bonds that drain you. Think of the friend who always needs you, but is never there when you need them. Or the partner who takes your sacrifices for granted, assuming you'll always be there no matter what. The longer you ignore the reality, that loyalty without reciprocity is exploitation, the deeper you sink into bitterness and resentment. This leads to the second consequence, exploitation. When you don't understand the psychology of power, you become easy prey for those who do. Your kindness becomes a tool in their hands. Your loyalty becomes leverage. Your silence becomes permission. And the worst part? You often don't even notice it's happening until it's too late. By the time you wake up, you've already given away your energy, your time, your dignity, without realizing you were being played. Machiavelli saw this clearly in politics, but it applies to all human dynamics. When you assume others will treat you with the same sincerity you treat them, you set yourself up for devastation. Because while you're living by ideals, others are acting on incentives. Then there's the third consequence, betrayal. Betrayal is inevitable if you don't prepare for it. You think your colleagues are your friends until they side with the new manager. You think your partner will never stray until an opportunity arises. You think your allies in a project have your back until it benefits them to cut you out. Machiavelli didn't say this to make us paranoid. He said it to make us prepared. Because betrayal isn't the exception. It's part of the human landscape. And when you ignore that, betrayal hits not just as loss, but as shock. And shock is often more destructive than the betrayal itself. There's another, subtler consequence of ignoring the psychology of power: self-betrayal. When you cling to the illusion that the world is fair, you start explaining away mistreatment instead of confronting it. You think, maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I just need to give more. You internalize failure as your own fault, when in reality, you were just playing the wrong game. And that's the cruel irony. You begin to betray yourself long before others do. You silence your instincts. You excuse toxic behavior. You shrink your boundaries. All because you refuse to accept Machiavelli's uncomfortable truth. People act out of self-interest, not pure goodwill. Let me tell you a story that illustrates this. In the early 1500s, Cesare Borgia, one of Machiavelli's great case studies, rose to power in Italy. He was ruthless, yes, but he was also brilliantly strategic. He rewarded loyalty, but crushed betrayal immediately. He projected generosity when it served him, but never hesitated to instill fear when necessary. For a time, he seemed unstoppable. But then his fortune changed. His father, the Pope, died, and his enemies closed in. Suddenly, all the friends and allies who had sworn loyalty to him vanished. Machiavelli noted this with almost clinical detachment. Their loyalty was never to Cesare himself, but to the power he embodied. Once that power weakened, so did their allegiance. Now, think about your own life. How many people in your orbit are loyal to you, not because of who you are, but because of what you provide? Status, comfort, validation, or even just convenience. This is the uncomfortable truth Machiavelli forces us to face. Loyalty is often circumstantial. Ignore that and you'll be blindsided when it disappears. But there's a deeper layer still: the psychological toll. When you live blind to the realities of power, you end up feeling perpetually confused. You ask yourself, why do I keep getting overlooked? Why do people keep taking advantage of me? Why do I always end up on the losing side? And, without the clarity of Machiavelli's insights, you come up with the wrong answers. You think, I just need to be nicer. I just need to try harder. I just need to trust more. But all you're doing is doubling down on the very illusions that are hurting you. This creates a cycle of disappointment. You give, you're betrayed, you explain it away, and you give again. Over time, this erodes not just your relationships, but your sense of self. You begin to wonder if you're broken, if maybe you're simply destined to be overlooked or used. And this is the final, most devastating consequence of ignoring Machiavelli: disempowerment. You lose faith not only in others, but in yourself. You feel like life is something that happens to you, not something you have any control over, and that helplessness becomes its own prison. Now, let me be clear. Machiavelli didn't teach that all people are evil, or that you must become ruthless to survive. What he taught is that if you want to preserve your freedom, your dignity, and your influence, you must see reality without illusions, because illusions are the softest chains and the hardest to break. So, what do we do with this knowledge? If loyalty is fragile, if appearances matter more than truth, if betrayal is always a possibility, how do we live without collapsing into paranoia or cynicism? That's the paradox Machiavelli left us with. His writings show us the danger, but they also contain the beginnings of the solution. Because if you can face these dark truths without flinching, you can begin to play the game on your own terms. You can learn to command respect without cruelty, to project strength without tyranny, to anticipate betrayal without becoming bitter. And that's where we turn next. Because Machiavelli didn't just describe the dangers of power, he also revealed the strategies for navigating them. So far, we've uncovered the mechanics of power, and then we've explored the dangers of ignoring them: invisibility, exploitation, betrayal, and ultimately self-betrayal. But now we arrive at the real question: what do we do with all this? How do you take Machiavelli's brutal, unsentimental truths and actually use them to transform your life without becoming the very tyrant you fear? This is the paradox. Because if you take Machiavelli at his darkest, you might think the only way forward is manipulation, fear, and domination. But that's a caricature of his teaching. The deeper reading, the more honest reading, shows us something else. He wasn't telling us to be monsters. He was telling us to stop being naive. He was showing us that only by understanding the shadow side of human nature can we build power that is stable, resilient, and, yes, even ethical. Let's begin with the first step: perception. Machiavelli famously wrote, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand." Translation: people are guided more by appearances than by truth. That might sound cynical, but it's also liberating, because it means you have the ability to shape how you are perceived. If you want respect, you cannot rely on people simply knowing the real you. You must become intentional about what version of yourself you present. This doesn't mean being fake. It means being strategic. Imagine your life like a stage. You don't reveal every messy backstage detail to the audience. You show them a polished performance that communicates your value. In practice, this could mean dressing in a way that signals confidence. It could mean controlling your emotional expression so you don't seem desperate or volatile. It could mean knowing when to be silent so your words carry more weight when you speak. Strategic perception isn't lying, it's leadership. The second step is understanding loyalty. Machiavelli said it's safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. People often misunderstand this line as advocating cruelty, but think deeper. What he really meant is this: affection is fleeting, but respect endures. If you build your relationships solely on being liked, you will always be at the mercy of others' moods and whims. But if you cultivate respect, by demonstrating competence, by holding firm boundaries, by making it clear you won't tolerate exploitation, then even those who don't like you will think twice before crossing you. So, how do you apply this? Stop chasing approval. Stop trying to be the nice guy or the people pleaser. Instead, ask yourself, do people respect me? Do they see me as someone whose presence matters, whose boundaries are real, whose contributions cannot be ignored? Respect is built through consistency, decisiveness, and strength. You don't have to rule with fear, but you must never be so soft that you can be walked on. The third step is mastering conflict. Machiavelli warned, "War cannot be avoided. It can only be postponed to the advantage of others." That's not just about armies, it's about life. Conflict is inevitable, in your career, in your family, in your relationships. Avoiding it doesn't eliminate it. It only delays it until it hits you harder. The transformation comes when you stop seeing conflict as a threat and start seeing it as an arena of growth. Here's the practical key: prepare in peace for the battles of tomorrow. Build skills before you need them. If you know someone in your workplace will eventually challenge your role, strengthen your competence now. If you know your relationship has unspoken tensions, address them before they explode. If you know life is unpredictable, save money and develop resilience before crisis strikes. The one who prepares doesn't have to fight as often, because their very readiness deters attack. The fourth step is what I call strategic generosity. Machiavelli noted that rulers who tried to be loved by giving endlessly to their people often ended up broke and despised. Why? Because generosity without limits creates dependence and resentment. If you give too much, people see you as weak. If you give nothing, they hate you. The solution: give strategically. Provide value in a way that enhances your position rather than diminishes it. Think about it like this. Don't be the person who always says yes, who sacrifices constantly, who empties themselves for others. That creates imbalance and bitterness. Instead, be generous in a way that creates reciprocity. Offer help, but make sure it builds a bond of respect. Share resources, but do it in a way that reinforces your leadership. This isn't cold. This is sustainable. Strategic generosity prevents you from being drained while still ensuring you are seen as valuable. The fifth step is reputation. Machiavelli said, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few know what you really are." He wasn't suggesting deception for its own sake. He was pointing out a fact. Your reputation is your most powerful armor. If people perceive you as competent, decisive, and strong, you don't need to constantly prove it. The reputation precedes you, protects you, and amplifies you. But here's the key. Reputation must be managed like a garden. You don't let it grow wild. You cultivate it. That means avoiding public displays of weakness that erode respect. It means being consistent in your actions so people know what to expect from you. And it means sometimes allowing a little mystery, because mystery is magnetic. When people can't quite predict you, they respect you more. Now, none of this works without the final step: self-mastery. Machiavelli studied rulers and politicians, but his insights apply to the most personal realm, your inner life. Because if you are ruled by your own impulses, fears, or need for approval, you can never truly wield power. The greatest transformation happens when you become sovereign over yourself. Self-mastery means not reacting to every provocation. It means knowing your emotions, but not being controlled by them. It means delaying gratification when strategy demands it. It means being able to walk away from people or situations that don't honor your worth. Power begins here, within, because no matter how skilled you are in perception, loyalty, conflict, generosity, or reputation, if you can't master yourself, someone else will always master you. Let me give you an image to hold on to. Imagine a lion and a fox. Machiavelli wrote that a wise ruler must be both. The lion to frighten wolves and the fox to recognize traps. The lion represents strength, courage, presence. The fox represents cunning, perception, subtlety. If you're only the lion, you'll stumble into traps. If you're only the fox, you'll be devoured by wolves. But when you combine the two, you become untouchable. This is the path of transformation. Not becoming ruthless, not becoming cynical, but becoming balanced. Lion and fox, strength and strategy, fear and love, generosity and discernment. And let's be honest, this isn't easy. It requires shedding the illusions you were taught about niceness, loyalty, and fairness. It requires facing uncomfortable truths about human nature. It requires practicing restraint when you want to explode, and speaking up when you want to hide. It's not a quick fix, it's a lifelong discipline. But the reward is immense. Because when you live this way, you stop being manipulated. You stop being invisible. You stop repeating cycles of betrayal and disappointment. Instead, you begin to command respect, to shape outcomes, to walk through life with the quiet power of someone who sees clearly and acts decisively. That's what Machiavelli really offered us, not a handbook for cruelty, but a manual for clarity. A way of seeing people as they are, not as we wish them to be. And when you see clearly, you stop stumbling in the dark. Now, as we close in on the end of this journey, the question is, how do we hold on to these insights? How do we make sure they don't just inspire us in this moment but actually reshape the way we live tomorrow? That's where we'll go next. Because if you walk away with only one thing from this video, it should be this. Knowledge of power is only potential. What matters is how you act on it. We've traveled a long way together in this video. We started with a question. Why do so many good, hardworking, well-intentioned people end up ignored, overlooked, or betrayed? And the answer, though uncomfortable, was clear: because they didn't understand power. They lived in the illusion that people are rational, that loyalty is automatic, that kindness alone guarantees love or respect. Machiavelli tore through those illusions with his brutal honesty. He showed us that people are guided more by appearances than reality, that loyalty without reciprocity is exploitation, that conflict is inevitable and must be prepared for, that reputation matters more than authenticity, and that it is safer to be respected, even feared, than to be naively loved. But we didn't stop there. We didn't reduce his teaching to cruelty or manipulation. Instead, we dug deeper and found something liberating. By acknowledging the darker truths of human nature, you actually become freer, not more trapped. You see people as they are, not as you wish them to be. And that clarity allows you to navigate relationships, careers, and life itself with strength instead of weakness. Because here's the ultimate paradox. The person who avoids power, who refuses to acknowledge it, is the one most easily manipulated by it. But the person who studies it, who accepts its darker mechanics, gains the ability to use it wisely, responsibly, and effectively. Knowledge doesn't corrupt you. Ignorance does. So, what do you do with all of this? You start small. You practice strategic perception, choosing carefully what version of yourself you present. You stop begging for loyalty and instead demand reciprocity. You prepare in times of peace so you are ready in times of conflict. You become generous but strategically, never depleting yourself. You build a reputation that precedes and protects you. And above all, you master yourself. Because if you cannot command yourself, you cannot command anything. Think of the image Machiavelli gave us, the lion and the fox. Strength and strategy, courage and cunning. If you can hold both within you, you become unshakable. That doesn't mean you become ruthless. It doesn't mean you dominate everyone around you. It means you stop being prey. It means you stop walking into traps. It means you stop handing your power away out of fear of being disliked. And maybe that's the real transformation, not to become feared by others, but to stop fearing yourself, to stop fearing your own power. This video was never meant for everyone. It was meant for those who are tired of being overlooked, tired of being used, tired of repeating the same painful patterns. If you've made it this far, it means you're ready. Ready to stop living in illusions and start living with clarity. So here's my challenge for you. In the comments below, I want you to reflect on this. Where in your life have you been too much the lamb and not enough the lion? Too much the open book and not enough the fox? Your answer might be the beginning of your transformation. And if this opened your eyes, don't stop here. The next video takes us deeper into the psychology of power and influence. Specifically, how to make people want your approval. It's a principle Machiavelli hinted at, but few truly understand. Watch it only if you're ready to go further down this rabbit hole. Remember this: it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. But above all, never be ignored. From this moment forward, you will not be ignored again.